The September Consumer Price Index up 8.25% year over year. Core CPI, which excludes food and energy, up 6.6%, the biggest increase in 40 years. Both numbers worse than expected. The president, however, says we're on the right track.
Today's report shows, though, some progress. Overall, inflation was 2% over the last 3 months. That's down from 11% over the prior 3 months. That's progress.
Joining me right now is Forbes Media Chairman Steve Forbes and former CKE Restaurants President Andy Puzder. Gentlemen, great to see you today. Thank you so much for being here this weekend. Steve Forbes, kick us off, your reaction to what you heard from the president and these numbers this week.
Well, it's deja vu again. Sounds like Herbert Hoover during the Great Depression when he allegedly said prosperity's just around the corner. This happy talk from the Biden administration when people can see that things are not going well. Remember, a couple of months ago, he said inflation was 0%. You know, he said, look at the real numbers. Well, people are looking at the reality of the shopping place, the stores and the gasoline pumps. And unfortunately, the Federal Reserve believes the way you conquer inflation is by depressing the economy. And so they're going to push us into an unnecessary recession later this year and early next year. And
we heard just that, Andy, this week. Jamie Dimon says we'll be in recession within 6 months. The stock market's going to sell off another 20%. We're already in recession if you consider 2 quarters of contraction a recession. How do you see things from your standpoint?
Well, you can't fill your gas tank and you can't feed your family on some progress. We've seen wages adjusted for inflation decreased by over 4% during this president's term in office. And now the Fed is trying to slow the labor market. They're trying to drive the labor market down, and wages don't go up when employees are competing with each other for jobs. So this is going to go on for quite a while. I think Jamie's got it right. We're looking towards a deeper recession than the one I believe most people think we're in now. I think Americans perceive us as in a recession, and I think that's even more important than whether we're technically in a recession. We need a new Congress. We need a new administration. We need to get policies in that address the problems we're facing and not some theoretical, idealistic agenda.
Yeah, unfortunately, all of these policies out of this White House have stoked inflation, like $5 trillion in spending, like shutting down energy production in America. Andy, you're a restaurant guy. We saw a producer price index this week, which was also hotter than expected. When the restaurants and the producers have to pay more for their product, they have to pass it on, right? I mean, they're certainly not going to swallow those extra costs forever.
Well, you swallow the cost for too long, you go out of business. So they're either not going to be around or they're going to have to pass these costs on. And that's a big part of what's driving inflation now. Is we really have never supported the supply side by cutting taxes, deregulating as opposed to this excessive regulation, focusing on domestic energy production. A good example is this independent contractor regulation that they're talking about coming up with. That's going to hurt gig workers. It's going to hurt franchisees. It's going to slow the economy. It's going to create uncertainty. They can't stop stumbling over their own feet in trying to solve these problems. They keep adding to them.
Well, Steve Forbes, the problem is they don't even acknowledge it. They don't understand cause and effect, in my view. What are your thoughts on what this means for the Federal Reserve? I think this report this week on CPI and PPI pretty much guarantees another aggressive move November 1st and 2nd, right? The next Fed meeting?
Oh, absolutely. And the key thing is what's going to happen at the meeting after the November meeting. Are they going to continue to be as aggressive? Unfortunately, they're artificially raising interest rates instead of letting the market set interest rates. And as a result, they're tanking the housing market. We've already seen that in motion. And they're going to tank the economy. Rising interest rates means fewer loans, means more costs on credit cards and the like. So they're going to have their recession big time. But unfortunately, you don't cure inflation by depressing the economy. You do it by stabilizing the dollar. That's the great lesson of the 1980s. And this administration is hitting it badly on both fronts, depressing the economy with higher interest rates. And as you point out, and Andy pointed out, putting in regulations and the like that depress the production of services and products. It's absolutely weird and perverse and destructive.
Well, so far we haven't really seen the jobs market collapse. We are expecting jobs to get impacted at some point, Steve. What's your take on what 2023 looks like with regard to jobs?
It's going to reverse. You got a little taste of it in the last jobs report when there are 1 million fewer openings. I think you're going to see that trend in the next 6 months continue. So instead of having a market where jobs go begging, you're going to have a market, unfortunately, where employees are going to be looking for jobs rather than employers looking for employees. It's going to reverse, and these things reverse very quickly, as Andy knows from real experience. When an economy turns, you have to take drastic measures, whether you're a small business or a big business, and cutbacks always mean fewer jobs.
And Andy, I think we saw that in the last jobs numbers because the participation rate is stubbornly low. What does that mean? People don't want to come back to work because they're getting all this stimulus and stimulus checks. They're going to have 1 or 2 gigs on their own and not go back to the office.
Yeah, well, we've got 2 headwinds heading towards each other here. One is that people are spending the savings rate is way down. Credit card charges, consumer credit is way up. So they're spending their savings, they're using their credit cards to get by. And we're heading into a time when, as Steve points out, they're going to need jobs. They're going to be fewer jobs because of the policies that the Fed is implementing at a time, exactly the same time when Americans need jobs. So you're seeing labor participation go down, which makes the unemployment rate look better. But the underlying economic factors are much, much worse than they were even a year ago, let alone 2 years ago.
All right, gentlemen, great to see you both. Thank you so much for weighing in on all of that. Steve Forbes and Andy Puzder joining us this weekend. Thank you. We will see you soon, gentlemen.